Security removes Marcus Thompson from First National Bank for wearing a white t-shirt while depositing $2.3 million. The bulletproof glass reflects Janet Coleman's satisfied smirk as two security guards escort Marcus Thompson toward the exit. Other customers crane their necks, whispers rippling through the marble lobby like wildfire. Marcus walks calmly between the guards, his worn leather messenger bag clutched in steady hands, his white cotton t-shirt somehow marking him as suspicious in this temple of commerce. "Sometimes the customer isn't just right," the narrator's voice cuts through the tension. "He's the boss." Marcus pauses at the revolving door, pulls out his phone and dials a single number. "It's time," he says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. 7 minutes later, every employee in the building receives an identical message. Termination effective immediately. Janet Coleman just fired herself. What would you do if this happened to you? Let us know where you're watching from. But who was Marcus Thompson really? And how did 7 minutes change everything? 2 hours earlier, Marcus Thompson pushes through the heavy glass doors of First National Bank's downtown branch. The Tuesday afternoon sun catches the simple silver watch on his wrist. Nothing flashy, nothing that screams wealth. His dark jeans are clean but worn, his white t-shirt soft from countless washes. He carries himself with quiet confidence, nodding politely to the security guard who barely acknowledges his greeting. The marble floors echo with the click of heels and shuffle of dress shoes, but Marcus's sneakers make no sound as he approaches the customer service desk. Behind the bulletproof partition, Sarah Miller, a young teller with kind eyes, looks up from her computer screen. "Good afternoon. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to make a business deposit, please." Marcus's voice is calm, professional. He reaches into his messenger bag and withdraws a folder containing the check and supporting documentation. From her glass office overlooking the lobby, branch manager Janet Coleman watches through Venetian blinds. 38 years old with 12 years of banking experience, she prides herself on reading people. Her eyes narrow as she takes in Marcus's appearance. The casual clothes, the modest car she glimpsed through the window, the way he moves without the entitled swagger of her usual high-dollar clients. She picks up her desk phone and dials Sarah's extension. "Keep an eye on the gentleman at your window," she says, her voice low but carrying enough authority to make Sarah's shoulders tense. Something seems off. Sarah glances up at Marcus, who's patiently organizing his paperwork. Nothing about his demeanor suggests anything unusual, but Janet's tone brooks no argument. "Yes, ma'am." Marcus slides the check through the security slot. Sarah's eyes widen slightly as she reads the amount. $2,300,000 from Morrison Industries, made out to Thompson Enterprises. The documentation appears legitimate. Business license, tax ID, corporate registration papers, all properly notarized. "This is quite a substantial deposit, Mr. Sarah checks his driver's license. "Mr. Thompson, I'll need to verify a few details." "Of course. Take your time." But Janet Coleman is already walking across the lobby, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown timer. She's made her decision based on appearances, on assumptions, on biases she doesn't even recognize in herself. Janet Coleman was about to make the biggest mistake of her career. "Excuse me, Sarah." Janet Coleman's voice cuts through the routine transaction like a blade. She positions herself beside the teller window, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. "I'll handle this from here." Sarah's fingers pause over her keyboard. The verification process is standard, the documentation legitimate, but she knows better than to question her manager in front of a customer. "Of course, Ms. Coleman." Janet turns to Marcus with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Thompson, is it? I'm Janet Coleman, branch manager. I understand you're attempting to deposit a rather large check today." "That's correct." Marcus maintains his composure, though something in her tone sets off alarm bells. "All the documentation is there: business registration, tax identification, corporate account information." "Yes, I'm sure it is." Janet picks up the check, examining it under the light as if she's never seen one before. Morrison Industries. Tell me, Mr. Thompson, what exactly is your relationship with this company? The question hangs in the air, loaded with implications. Other customers in the lobby begin to notice the extended conversation, heads turning toward the scene unfolding at the teller window. They acquired one of my subsidiary companies. This is the final payment. Marcus's patience shows the first hairline crack. The documentation explains everything. Janet makes a show of shuffling through the papers, her movements deliberately slow. I see. And what type of business are you in exactly? Technology consulting and development. Marcus watches her face, recognizing the skepticism there. Is there a problem with the deposit? Well, you understand we have certain protocols when it comes to large cash transactions. This isn't cash. It's a certified corporate check. And your, shall we say, casual appearance raises some questions about the legitimacy of these funds. The words hang in the air like poison gas. Marcus feels the familiar tightness in his chest, the surge of anger he's learned to control over decades of building his empire. Around them, conversations quiet as other customers sense the tension. Are you suggesting something improper about my business dealings, Ms. Coleman? Janet's smile widens, predatory now. I'm simply following bank policy, Mr. Thompson. Surely you understand our need to be cautious in these situations. The emphasis on these situations lands like a slap. Marcus straightens, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. And what type of situation would that be? What Marcus did next would expose Janet's critical error in judgment. Janet Coleman's voice rises just enough to ensure the entire lobby hears every word. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to need you to step aside while we conduct a more thorough verification of these documents. The request sounds reasonable on the surface, but the underlying message is clear to everyone watching. Marcus feels the weight of dozens of eyes on him as Janet gestures toward a corner area typically reserved for customers with credit problems. I've provided everything required for this transaction, Marcus says, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. The check is certified, the documentation is complete. Nevertheless, given the unusual nature of this deposit and certain inconsistencies I've observed, we need to take additional precautions. Janet's eyes sweep over his casual attire meaningfully. I'm sure you understand. An elderly white man in an expensive suit nods approvingly from the loan officer's desk. Good for her, he murmurs to his companion. Can't be too careful these days. But Marcus catches the uncomfortable expression on Sarah's face, the way the security guard Dave Rodriguez shifts nervously by the door. Not everyone in this room agrees with Janet's assessment. What inconsistencies? Marcus asks, though he already knows the answer. Janet makes a production of spreading his documents across the counter. Well, for starters, it's unusual for someone in your position to have access to this level of corporate funding. The lifestyle indicated by your appearance doesn't typically align with multi-million-dollar business transactions. The words hit like physical blows. Around the lobby, phones emerge from pockets and purses. A young mother shields her children from the commotion. A business professional in the corner discreetly starts recording. My position. Marcus's voice drops to barely above a whisper, but it carries clearly in the suddenly silent lobby. Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be, Janet continues, emboldened by what she perceives as submission. I'm going to need to search your bag for any additional documentation. Dave, could you assist me? The security guard approaches reluctantly. Ma'am, I'm not sure that's... It's fine, Marcus says, his jaw tight. He opens his messenger bag, revealing business cards, contracts, an iPad, and several folders of legitimate corporate documents. Nothing remotely suspicious. Janet examines each item as if it might reveal some hidden fraud, her performance growing more theatrical with each passing minute. These business cards could be printed by anyone. How do we know Thompson Enterprises is a legitimate company? A woman near the entrance pulls out her smartphone and searches online. Her eyebrows rise as she reads the results, but she keeps her discovery to herself. Perhaps, Janet says, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, "You'd be more comfortable conducting this type of transaction at one of the community banks downtown. They're more familiar with your kind of business." The phrase, "your kind," hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Marcus closes his eyes for just a moment, gathering himself. When he opens them, something fundamental has shifted. "Ms. Coleman," he says quietly, "you're going to remember this conversation for the rest of your life." He begins collecting his documents with deliberate precision, each movement controlled and purposeful. Janet watches with growing satisfaction, certain she's won this battle. Janet Coleman had exactly 6 minutes left as branch manager. Marcus Thompson walks through the revolving door with measured steps, each footfall echoing the controlled fury burning in his chest. The afternoon sun hits his face, but he feels only the cold calculation of a man who has reached his breaking point. Behind him, through the bank's floor-to-ceiling windows, he can see Janet Coleman returning to her office with the swagger of someone who believes she's just saved her institution from a potential threat. He reaches his modest sedan, a deliberate choice for today's visit, and sits behind the wheel without starting the engine. His hands rest on the steering wheel, steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. In his rearview mirror, he watches Dave Rodriguez, the security guard, step outside for a cigarette break, his face troubled. Marcus retrieves his phone and scrolls to a contact simply labeled legal. The call connects on the first ring. "Patricia, it's Marcus. I need you to document everything that just happened at First National downtown." "Yes, everything. I want timestamps, witness statements, security footage requests, the full litigation package." He pauses, listening. "No, not for a lawsuit. For termination proceedings." The second call goes to a number marked Corporate Communications. "James, prepare a press statement about discriminatory practices in banking. Yes, today. I'll send you the details in 10 minutes. His third call connects him directly to the chairman of Thompson Financial Group's board of directors. "Robert, emergency board meeting. Conference room A, 1 hour. We have a code red situation at First National downtown." While making these calls, Marcus watches through the bank's windows as Janet returns to her routine, completely oblivious to the corporate machinery now grinding into motion. She's probably already crafting her version of events for the incident report, painting herself as the vigilant manager who prevented potential fraud. Marcus pulls up another contact. "HR executive. Linda, I need Janet Coleman's complete employment file within 30 minutes. Yes, including any previous complaints or disciplinary actions. Also, prepare termination documentation for the entire downtown branch management structure." He listens to her questions. Because as of today, Thompson Financial Group has zero tolerance for discrimination. And I'm about to make that policy very clear. His final call is to Thompson Financial's head of security. "Michael, I need you at First National downtown immediately. Bring the legal documentation for our acquisition of their parent company. Some people seem to have forgotten who owns their paychecks." As he ends the call, Marcus catches sight of his reflection in the side mirror. The same man who walked into that bank wearing a simple white t-shirt now looks like exactly what he is. A CEO about to remind an entire branch staff that actions have consequences. He starts the engine and pulls away from the curb, but not to leave. Instead, he drives around the block and parks across the street, where he has a clear view of the bank's entrance. From this vantage point, he can see Janet through her office window, probably finishing her incident report about the suspicious individual she successfully turned away. In 18 minutes, 3 black SUVs will pull up to the bank's entrance. In 25 minutes, Janet Coleman will learn the true cost of her assumptions. Marcus checks his watch and settles back to wait. In 30 seconds, Janet Coleman would learn who she really tried to humiliate. Janet Coleman finishes typing her incident report with the satisfaction of a job well done. The document paints Marcus Thompson as a potential fraud risk who became increasingly agitated when proper security protocols were applied. She prints 2 copies, one for her files, one for district management, and leans back in her ergonomic chair, already anticipating the commendation she'll receive for her vigilance. Through her office window, she spots 3 black SUVs pulling up to the bank's entrance in perfect formation. Men and women in dark business suits emerge, their movements coordinated and purposeful. Janet frowns, checking her calendar for any scheduled inspections or visits. Nothing. The lead figure catches her attention. A tall black man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his presence commanding immediate respect from the other professionals flanking him. Something about his bearing seems familiar, but Janet can't place where she might have seen him before. "Sarah," she calls through her office door. "Are we expecting corporate visitors today?" "No, ma'am," Sarah replies, but her voice carries an odd tension. "They're asking to speak with you specifically." Janet straightens her blazer and checks her reflection in her computer monitor before walking into the lobby. The suited professionals have arranged themselves with military precision, legal portfolios and iPads at the ready. The lead man extends his hand with professional courtesy. "Ms. Coleman, I'm Marcus Thompson, Chairman and CEO of Thompson Financial Group. These are my legal counsel and human resources representatives." The words hit Janet like ice water. Her hand freezes halfway to his, her mind racing to process what she's hearing. Thompson Financial Group, the parent company that acquired First National 6 months ago. The man standing before her, immaculate in his tailored suit, bears an unmistakable resemblance to... "I believe we met earlier today," Marcus continues, his voice carrying quiet authority, "though I was dressed somewhat differently at the time." The blood drains from Janet's face as recognition crashes over her like a tsunami. The casual clothes, the modest demeanor, the $2.3 million check she refused to process, every detail comes flooding back with crystalline clarity. "Oh my God," she whispers. "Indeed," Marcus replies. "We need to talk." But Marcus wasn't finished. He had questions that demanded answers. The conference room feels smaller with Marcus Thompson commanding the head of the table, his legal team flanking him like prosecutors at a tribunal. Janet sits across from him, her hands trembling slightly as she tries to maintain her composure. The incident report she'd been so proud of 20 minutes ago now lies spread before them like evidence in a criminal case. "Let's review your assessment of this morning's events," Marcus begins, his voice clinical. He slides a printed email across the mahogany table. "This is your message to district management, sent 47 minutes ago." Janet's own words stare back at her. "Successfully prevented potential fraud attempt by suspicious individual claiming multi-million-dollar business transaction. Subject became increasingly agitated when proper verification protocols applied. Recommend additional security training for staff regarding profile recognition." "Profile recognition," Marcus repeats, each syllable weighted with meaning. "Can you elaborate on what profiles you were recognizing, Ms. Coleman?" I was simply following standard banking procedures for large transactions." Janet's voice wavers as she speaks to her own shoes, rather than meeting his eyes. The legal counsel opens her laptop and angles it toward the group. "This is security footage from your lobby today, Ms. Coleman. Would you like to identify which standard banking procedures required you to publicly question Mr. Thompson's legitimacy based on his appearance?" The footage plays in silent accusation. Janet watches herself examine Marcus's documentation with theatrical suspicion, sees her own condescending expressions, hears her voice suggesting he visit a community bank more suited to his kind of business. "I treated him the same way I would treat any customer in that situation," she insists, but her voice lacks conviction. "Really?" Marcus opens another folder. "Here are the last 12 large deposits processed at this branch. All were handled by you personally. Can you explain why Mr. Peterson's $1.8 million real estate deposit required no additional verification, or why Mrs. Whitfield's $2.1 million inheritance check was processed without question?" The photographs of the other customers speak volumes, all impeccably dressed, all white, all treated with the deference Janet believes they deserve. "Those situations were different," Janet stammers. "How?" Marcus's question hangs in the air like a blade. Sarah Miller shifts uncomfortably in her chair beside Janet. Dave Rodriguez stares at his hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable. Ms. Coleman, Marcus continues, you have exactly one opportunity to explain to me why a black CEO in casual clothes deserved different treatment than your other high-value customers. The hardest decision still lay ahead. Who would survive the reckoning? Janet Coleman's mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air. The weight of evidence surrounds her. Security footage, documented emails, witness testimonies. Each piece building an unassailable case of discriminatory behavior. Her carefully constructed justifications crumble under Marcus's methodical examination. There were security concerns, she finally manages, her voice barely above a whisper. Security concerns about what specifically? Marcus's HR representative, Linda Martinez, leans forward with a thick file in her hands. Because according to your employment record, Ms. Coleman, this isn't your first incident involving discriminatory treatment of minority customers. The file opens to reveal 3 formal complaints filed against Janet over the past 2 years. Each follows a similar pattern: excessive scrutiny, public humiliation, service denial based on security protocols that somehow only applied to customers of color. These were all investigated and dismissed, Janet protests, but her voice lacks any conviction. Dismissed by whom? Linda asks pointedly. Your district manager, who coincidentally shares your perspectives on customer profiling? Dave Rodriguez finally speaks up, his voice heavy with guilt. Ma'am, I never felt comfortable with how you handled those situations. You always seemed to target certain customers for extra attention. Sarah Miller nods reluctantly. The protocols you used today, they're not in any manual I've seen. You made Mr. Thompson stand in the corner like he was being punished. You were both following my direct orders, Janet snaps, desperately trying to regain control of the narrative. Orders that violated every principle of customer service and basic human dignity, Marcus interjects. His voice remains calm, but the steel underneath is unmistakable. Ms. Coleman, in the 23 years since I started my first business, I've faced discrimination countless times, but I've never encountered someone who weaponized their authority so blatantly. The legal counsel slides another document across the table. This is Thompson Financial Group's updated discrimination policy, effective immediately. Zero tolerance means exactly that. Zero tolerance. Janet stares at the document, understanding dawning in her eyes. The official letterhead, the corporate seals, the signatures. This isn't just a reprimand. This is her professional death warrant. You can't do this, she whispers. I was protecting the bank. I was doing my job. Your job, Marcus replies, was to provide professional service to every customer who walked through that door. Instead, you chose to humiliate someone based on the color of his skin and the clothes on his back. He stands, his decision made. In 60 seconds, careers would end and a message would be sent across the entire industry. Marcus Thompson moves to the head of the conference table with the quiet authority of a man who has built empires from nothing. The afternoon light filtering through the bank's windows catches the Thompson Financial Group pin on his lapel, a detail that somehow escaped Janet Coleman's notice during her earlier performance. Before we proceed with individual accountability measures, Marcus begins, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, I want everyone in this room to understand exactly what transpired here today. He gestures to his legal team, who distribute thick folders to each person present. The covers bear the official seal of Thompson Financial Group and the words, Acquisition Documentation, Confidential. 6 months ago, Thompson Financial Group acquired First National Bank's parent company in a $2.8 billion transaction. As chairman and CEO, I make it my practice to conduct unannounced inspections of our properties to ensure they maintain the standards of excellence our customers deserve. Janet's face has gone ashen. Dave Rodriguez shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Sarah Miller looks stricken as the full magnitude of the situation becomes clear. Today's visit was supposed to be routine, Marcus continues. I deliberately chose casual attire because I wanted to observe how your staff treats ordinary customers during normal business operations. What I discovered instead was a systematic pattern of discriminatory behavior that violates not only our corporate values, but federal banking regulations. He opens his folder and pulls out a printed photograph. This is the check I attempted to deposit. $2.3 million from Morrison Industries for the acquisition of one of my subsidiary companies. The transaction was not only legitimate, it was documented in your own corporate newsletters 3 weeks ago. Linda Martinez, the HR representative, stands and addresses the room with prosecutorial precision. Our investigation has revealed that Ms. Coleman has a documented history of discriminatory behavior toward minority customers. 3 formal complaints were filed against her in the past 18 months, all following identical patterns of harassment and service denial. She slides another document across the table. Here's the customer satisfaction data for this branch over the past year. You'll notice a concerning trend. Minority customers report significantly lower satisfaction scores, with multiple complaints about excessive scrutiny and unprofessional treatment. Marcus takes control again, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. Ms. Coleman, your employment with Thompson Financial Group is terminated effective immediately. Your actions today violated federal anti-discrimination laws, company policy, and basic human decency. Janet's composure finally cracks completely. You can't do this. I was protecting the bank's interests. I was following protocols. Whose protocols? Marcus asks quietly. Show me the manual that instructs you to humiliate customers based on their appearance. Point to the policy that requires additional scrutiny for black men in casual clothes. Silence fills the room like poison gas. Marcus turns to Dave Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, you followed orders you knew were wrong. You'll receive a written warning and mandatory sensitivity training. Your employment continues on probationary status. Dave nods, relief and shame warring on his face. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. Ms. Miller, Marcus continues, you demonstrated professionalism throughout this incident and showed clear discomfort with your manager's instructions. Thompson Financial Group would like to offer you a promotion to assistant branch manager, effective immediately. Sarah's eyes widen in shock. Sir, thank you. The legal counsel speaks up. We've prepared termination documentation for Ms. Coleman. Security will escort her from the premises. Her personal belongings will be collected under supervision and delivered to her home address. Janet makes one final desperate attempt. This is reverse discrimination. You set me up. You came in here dressed like... Like what, Ms. Coleman? Marcus's voice drops to barely above a whisper. Like someone who doesn't deserve basic respect? Like someone whose money isn't as good as anyone else's? Like someone you can humiliate publicly because of the color of his skin? The words hang in the air like an indictment. I could sue this institution for millions of dollars, Marcus continues. I could turn this into a national scandal that would destroy careers and reputations. Instead, I'm choosing to use this moment as an opportunity for education and reform. He stands, commanding the room's complete attention. Thompson Financial Group will become the gold standard for inclusive banking. This branch will be our flagship location for diversity training. Every employee in our system will learn from what happened here today. The HR representative hands Janet a sealed envelope. Your final paycheck, calculated according to labor law requirements. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items from your office. Marcus watches as Janet stumbles from the room, escorted by security. 23 years of building his business empire, facing discrimination at every turn, has led to this moment of absolute authority. Ladies and gentlemen, he addresses the remaining staff, we're going to prove that doing the right thing is also good business. But the real test would come when the story hit the headlines. The story breaks 18 hours later on the Business Journal's website under the headline, Banking CEO Fires Branch Manager After Experiencing Discrimination Firsthand. Within minutes, the article spreads across social media platforms like wildfire, igniting conversations about workplace bias that reach millions of users worldwide. Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story in the comments below. Marcus Thompson sits in his corner office 60 floors above the city, watching news vans gather outside the First National building through floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone hasn't stopped ringing since dawn. Reporters, civil rights organizations, business leaders, and politicians all clamoring for statements about what the media has dubbed the 7-minute reckoning. James Patterson, Thomson Financial's head of communications, bursts through the door carrying a tablet loaded with social media metrics. Marcus, this thing has gone completely viral. #banking. While black is trending #1 nationally, we're getting support messages from customers, employees, even competitors. But not everyone celebrates the swift justice. Janet Coleman sits in her attorney's office across town, dabbing at her eyes with tissue while her lawyer, Richard Steinberg, reviews the termination documentation with growing frustration. This is a textbook case of entrapment, Steinberg insists, though his voice lacks conviction. Thompson deliberately deceived her about his identity. No reasonable person would have known he was the CEO. Richard, Janet interrupts, just tell me we can fight this. I have a mortgage, car payments, my daughter's college tuition. I can't afford to be unemployed. Steinberg studies the security footage again, pausing on moments where Janet's discriminatory behavior is most blatant. Janet, I need you to understand something. This footage shows you treating Thompson differently than other customers. If we go to court, this will be played for a jury, and they'll see exactly what I'm seeing. Meanwhile, Thomson Financial's legal team works around the clock to stay ahead of the developing crisis. Patricia Williams, the company's chief legal counsel, coordinates with federal regulators who've launched an expedited investigation into discriminatory practices across the banking industry. The FDIC wants our complete cooperation, she reports to Marcus during an emergency board meeting. They're particularly interested in our internal policies for preventing discrimination and how we plan to ensure this doesn't happen again. Board Chairman Robert Mitchell nods approvingly. Marcus, your handling of this situation has been exemplary. The board stands behind your decisions completely. But the story takes an unexpected turn when Janet's termination becomes a rallying point for certain political commentators who frame the incident as reverse discrimination. Talk radio host Danny Morrison devotes his afternoon show to Janet's plight, describing her as a victim of political correctness gone too far. This hard-working bank manager followed proper security protocols, Morrison declares to his audience of 2.3 million listeners. And now she's been fired because she didn't recognize some CEO playing dress-up. Where does this end, folks? The backlash generates its own counter-backlash as social media users share their own experiences with banking discrimination. A hashtag emerges, #MyBankingStory, with thousands of people posting accounts of being profiled, questioned, or denied service based on their appearance or race. Dr. Angela Washington, a Harvard Business School professor specializing in workplace discrimination, appears on CNN to provide context. What we're seeing here isn't just about one incident, she explains. This is a systematic problem in American business culture. Mr. Thompson's response sends a clear message that there are consequences for discriminatory behavior. Thomson Financial's stock price initially dips 3% as investors worry about potential lawsuits and regulatory penalties. But by the end of the trading day, shares have rebounded to reach an all-time high as ESG-focused investment funds increase their positions dramatically. The market is rewarding companies that take concrete action on social issues, explains financial analyst Maria Rodriguez during an evening news segment. Thomson Financial isn't just talking about diversity, they're implementing real consequences for discrimination. Janet's situation deteriorates rapidly as the story gains national attention. Her husband, Michael Coleman, confronts her with printouts of the security footage that's been shared millions of times online. Janet, how could you treat someone like that? His voice carries decades of married disappointment. That man was conducting legitimate business and you humiliated him publicly. I was doing my job, Michael. I was protecting the bank from potential fraud. But even as she speaks, Janet realizes how hollow her justifications sound when confronted with video evidence. Their teenage daughter Emma comes home from school in tears. Mom, everyone at school is talking about this. My friends are asking if you're the racist bank manager from the videos. I don't know what to tell them. The federal investigation expands as other Thompson financial branches undergo surprise inspections. Congressional Banking Committee Chairwoman Elizabeth Santos announces hearings on discriminatory practices in financial services, with Marcus Thompson invited as the lead witness. This incident highlights systematic problems that require legislative solutions, Santos declares during a press conference. We need federal standards that ensure all Americans receive equal treatment in financial institutions. Yamis. Legal challenges emerge from unexpected directions. 3 customers who previously experienced discrimination at Janet's branch file a class action lawsuit against First National, seeking damages for emotional distress and civil rights violations. Their attorney, civil rights veteran David Kim, describes the case as potentially groundbreaking. We have documented evidence of a pattern of discriminatory behavior that was allowed to continue for years, Kim explains to reporters. Our clients deserve justice, and this case will ensure other victims come forward. Janet's attorney eventually advises her to seek a settlement rather than fight the termination. The evidence is overwhelming, Janet. The security footage, the witness testimonies, your own emails describing Thompson as suspicious. We have no defensible position. But Janet's problems extend beyond unemployment. The viral nature of her story makes her essentially unemployable in banking or any customer service industry. Background checks immediately reveal her association with one of the most widely discussed discrimination cases in recent memory. Thompson Financial announces a comprehensive diversity initiative worth $50 million, including mandatory bias training for all employees, community investment programs, and partnerships with historically black colleges and universities. The announcement generates overwhelmingly positive coverage and demonstrates the company's commitment to systematic change. Marcus uses his newfound platform to address discrimination beyond banking. Speaking at the National Urban League's annual conference, he shares his personal experiences with bias and explains how power brings responsibility. I could have simply fired Janet Coleman and moved on, he tells the audience of business leaders and civil rights advocates. But true leadership requires using moments of crisis to create lasting change. We have an opportunity to transform an entire industry's culture. The ripple effects extend internationally as European banking institutions examine their own practices and implement similar anti-discrimination policies. The Thompson model becomes a case study in business schools worldwide, demonstrating how swift accountability can transform corporate culture. 6 months later, investigative journalists uncover that Janet's discriminatory behavior was known to district management, but repeatedly ignored or minimized. District manager Frank Morrison, no relation to the radio host, faces his own termination as internal emails reveal his role in covering up previous complaints. The corruption went deeper than we initially realized, Marcus explains during a follow-up interview with 60 Minutes. Systematic discrimination requires systematic solutions. We're rebuilding this institution from the ground up. 1 year later, Janet Coleman would face her final reckoning. The State Employment Commission hearing room feels like a courtroom where justice has already been decided. Janet Coleman sits at a scarred wooden table, her once confident posture replaced by the hunched shoulders of a woman who has lost everything. The past year has aged her dramatically. Stress lines etch her face, her hair shows gray roots she can no longer afford to color, and her discount store business suit hangs loose on her diminished frame. Across the room, Thompson Financial's legal team arranges their evidence with the precision of surgeons preparing for a complex operation. The security footage, witness testimonies, and employment records that destroyed Janet's career 12 months ago remain as damning today as they were then. Ms. Coleman, the hearing officer begins, This is your final appeal regarding the termination of your employment. You have 30 minutes to present your case. Janet's attorney, a public defender assigned through legal aid after she could no longer afford private counsel, stands with visible reluctance. Your Honor, my client maintains that she was following established security protocols when dealing with what appeared to be an unusual transaction. But the words sound hollow even to Janet. She's had 365 days to replay that afternoon in her mind, to examine every choice that led to this moment. The confident branch manager who once commanded respect from customers and staff has been replaced by someone who can barely maintain eye contact with the hearing officer. Marcus Thompson enters the hearing room with quiet dignity, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. He's not here for vengeance. That was accomplished a year ago. He's here to ensure the system works, that accountability means something, that actions have permanent consequences. Mr. Thompson, the hearing officer acknowledges, please present your testimony regarding the termination in question. Marcus stands, his voice calm and measured. Ms. Coleman subjected me to discriminatory treatment based solely on my race and appearance. The security footage speaks for itself, but more importantly, our investigation revealed this wasn't an isolated incident. She had a documented pattern of targeting minority customers for harassment. The footage plays again, as devastating now as it was during the original termination meeting. Janet watches herself publicly humiliate a customer for the crime of being black in casual clothes, sees her own condescending expressions, hears her suggestion that Marcus try a community bank, more suited to his kind of business. I was wrong, Janet finally speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. I've had a year to think about what I did, and I was completely wrong. I let my biases control my actions, and I hurt someone who was just trying to conduct business. The admission comes too late. Her daughter Emma has changed schools twice to escape the notoriety. Her husband Michael filed for divorce 6 months ago, citing irreconcilable differences and financial strain. Her mother in Florida won't return her phone calls, ashamed of her daughter's national infamy. Ms. Coleman, the hearing officer continues, your employment record shows 3 previous incidents of discriminatory behavior toward minority customers. How do you explain this pattern? Janet's composure finally cracks completely. I don't know. I thought I was being careful protecting the bank, but I realize now that I was racist. I treated people differently because of how they looked, and that's inexcusable. The hearing officer reviews the mountain of evidence, customer complaints, witness statements, expert testimony about discriminatory practices in banking. The case isn't close. It never was. The commission finds that Ms. Coleman's termination was justified and appropriate given the severity of her discriminatory conduct. The appeal is denied. Janet collapses into her chair as the finality of the decision settles over her. She works part-time now at a retail store, making $12 an hour folding clothes and helping customers find their sizes. The banking career she spent 15 years building ended in 7 minutes of recorded humiliation. Outside the hearing room, a local reporter approaches Marcus for comment. Mr. Thompson, do you feel justice has been served? Justice isn't about punishment, Marcus replies thoughtfully. It's about ensuring this doesn't happen to anyone else. Ms. Coleman paid the price for her choices, but the real victory is the culture change we've created in the banking industry. Janet emerges from the building alone, walking to the bus stop where she'll wait for public transportation to take her to her evening shift at the retail store. The woman who once commanded a bank branch with discriminatory authority now rides the bus with the very people she once targeted. But the story's real impact extended far beyond one woman's downfall. 2 years after Janet Coleman's termination, the banking industry operates under a fundamentally transformed paradigm. The Thompson Standard has become the gold standard for inclusive financial services, with federal regulators mandating bias training and accountability measures across all federally insured institutions. The numbers tell a remarkable story of systematic change. Banking discrimination complaints have plummeted 73% nationwide, while customer satisfaction scores among minority clients have reached historic highs. Thomson Financial Group, once a mid-sized regional player, has grown into America's third-largest banking institution, proving that moral leadership generates measurable profits. The Marcus Thompson case study is now required reading in every MBA program in the country, explains Dr. Angela Washington during a symposium at Harvard Business School. Students learn that swift accountability isn't just ethically correct, it's financially advantageous. The ripple effects extend far beyond banking. Retail giants like Nordstrom and Target have implemented Thompson protocols, immediate termination policies for employees who demonstrate discriminatory behavior toward customers. The hospitality industry has followed suit, with major hotel chains conducting undercover bias testing to ensure equal treatment. Congress passed the Financial Services Equity Act 18 months ago, largely inspired by Marcus's testimony before the Banking Committee. The legislation requires banks to track and publicly report discrimination complaints, with federal funding tied to diversity metrics and customer satisfaction scores across demographic lines. Before the Thompson incident, discrimination was often treated as a training issue, explains Congresswoman Elizabeth Santos, who sponsored the legislation. Now, it's understood as a termination-level offense that threatens institutional credibility. International recognition has followed domestic reform. The United Nations invited Marcus to address their Human Rights Council about combating workplace discrimination, while the European Union has adapted Thomson Financial's policies for implementation across member nations. The original First National branch has been transformed into Thomson Financial's flagship diversity training center. Every new employee in the company spends 2 days at the facility learning about bias recognition and customer service excellence. The conference room where Janet Coleman was fired has been preserved as a teaching space, complete with video displays showing the security footage that changed an industry. Sarah Miller, now regional vice president at age 28, often conducts these training sessions. "We show new employees exactly what happened here," she explains to a group of branch managers. "We want them to understand that discrimination isn't just wrong, it's a career-ending mistake." The transformation hasn't been without resistance. Some longtime banking executives initially criticized Marcus's extreme response, arguing that termination was too harsh for a first offense. But competitive pressure quickly silenced such objections as Thomson Financial's market share expanded dramatically. Companies that failed to adopt inclusive practices found themselves losing customers and talent to competitors who embraced change, notes business analyst Maria Rodriguez. The market rewarded Thomson Financial's leadership while punishing institutions that maintained discriminatory cultures. Technology has accelerated the reform process. AI systems now monitor customer service interactions in real time, flagging potential bias incidents for immediate review. Banks that fail to implement such systems face regulatory penalties and customer boycotts organized through social media. The academic community has embraced the Thompson model as well. Business schools worldwide require courses on inclusive leadership, while research institutions study the correlation between diversity practices and financial performance. Multiple peer-reviewed studies confirm what Marcus proved. Companies that eliminate discrimination outperform their less inclusive competitors. 3 years later, Marcus Thompson would receive recognition that surprised even him. 3 years after that fateful Tuesday afternoon at First National Bank, Marcus Thompson stands in the rose garden of the White House, sunlight filtering through ancient oak trees as President Harris announces his nomination as Secretary of the Treasury. The irony isn't lost on him. A man once denied basic banking services now prepares to oversee the entire American financial system. Marcus Thompson has demonstrated that principled leadership and profitable business practices aren't just compatible, they're inseparable, the president declares to the assembled crowd of reporters, business leaders, and civil rights advocates. His transformation of the banking industry proves that doing the right thing is always good economics. Marcus thinks back to that moment when Janet Coleman suggested he try a community bank more suited to his kind. Now he'll regulate every bank in America, ensuring that no customer ever faces what he endured in that marble lobby 3 years ago. After the ceremony, Marcus drives alone to the downtown location where it all began. The building still houses Thompson Financial's flagship branch, but everything else has changed. Where Janet Coleman once ruled with discriminatory authority, Sarah Miller now manages a staff that reflects the diversity of the community they serve. "Mr. Thompson." Sarah greets him with genuine warmth as he enters the lobby. At 30, she's become one of the youngest regional vice presidents in banking history, her career transformed by her courage to stand up during that infamous confrontation. "We heard about the Treasury nomination. Congratulations!" Marcus surveys the bustling branch, customers of every background conducting business with smiling professional staff who understand that respect isn't contingent on appearance or assumed wealth. The transformation seems almost miraculous until he remembers the price paid to achieve it. "Any word from Janet Coleman lately?" he asks quietly. Sarah's expression grows somber. "She sent a letter last month through her lawyer. She's working as a cashier at a grocery store in Phoenix, trying to rebuild her life." The letter was an apology, a real one this time. Marcus nods thoughtfully. He'd heard about Janet's struggles, the divorce, the bankruptcy, the constant recognition that made employment difficult. Part of him feels genuine sympathy for her downfall, even as he knows the consequences were necessary and proportionate. "She asked me to tell you something," Sarah continues. "She said she finally understands that what happened to her wasn't unfair. It was accountability. And she's grateful in a strange way, because losing everything forced her to confront who she really was." The conversation is interrupted by a young black entrepreneur approaching the customer service desk, carrying business plans and financial projections for a startup tech company. Marcus watches as the teller greets him with professional courtesy, asking thoughtful questions about his business model and offering appropriate financial products without a hint of suspicion or bias. "That's exactly what should have happened to me 3 years ago," Marcus reflects aloud. "And it's what happens to everyone now," Sarah replies. "Every single day." Marcus's phone buzzes with congratulatory messages from business leaders, politicians, and civil rights advocates. Thompson Financial Group's stock price has reached another all-time high following news of his nomination. The company he built from nothing now employs 45,000 people across 47 states, all trained in the inclusive principles born from 7 minutes of corporate accountability. Outside, Marcus pauses beside his car and looks back at the building one final time. The bronze plaque beside the entrance reads, "Thompson Financial Group Diversity Training Center, where change begins with accountability." He thinks about the phone call that changed everything. 7 minutes from humiliation to termination, from discrimination to transformation. The ripple effects continue expanding, touching millions of lives, proving that individual courage can reshape entire industries. As he drives away, Marcus carries with him the knowledge that power without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without action is worthless. Sometimes the most important calls last exactly 7 minutes, and the decisions made in moments of crisis echo across generations. The ultimate moral crystallizes in his mind as he heads toward his next chapter of public service. Do you think Marcus Thompson's response was justified? Hit like if you support real accountability and share this story with someone who needs to see it. The story of Marcus Thompson and Janet Coleman represents more than one moment of corporate justice. It's a blueprint for how individual courage can transform entire systems. Every day, in offices and stores and service counters across America, similar moments of choice arise. Will we stand up to discrimination when we witness it? Will we use whatever power we possess to protect those who cannot protect themselves? Marcus Thompson proved that accountability doesn't have to wait for committees or investigations or gradual change. Sometimes justice requires immediate action, swift consequences, and the courage to use authority for moral purposes. His 7-minute phone call didn't just end one woman's career, it sent shockwaves through an entire industry that continues reverberating today. But this story also serves as a warning. In our interconnected world, discriminatory behavior can become viral infamy within hours. The same technology that spreads entertainment and news also documents injustice, ensuring that those who choose hatred face public accountability. Janet Coleman learned that bias carries a price, not just morally, but professionally, financially, and personally. The transformation extends beyond banking. Retail managers now understand that profiling customers can end careers instantly. Hotel staff know that discriminatory service creates liability for entire corporations. Restaurant owners train employees to treat every customer with equal respect, knowing that viral videos can destroy businesses overnight. Young entrepreneurs starting their first companies study the Thompson model, understanding that inclusive practices aren't just ethical imperatives, they're competitive advantages. Companies that embrace diversity consistently outperform those that maintain exclusive cultures, proving that doing right and doing well aren't contradictory goals. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination in your workplace? Would you have the courage to speak up, even if it meant challenging authority? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to act. The ripple effects continue expanding. Business schools teach courses on moral leadership using Marcus's example. Congressional hearings reference the Thompson standard when crafting legislation. International organizations invite American executives to share lessons learned from this 7-minute transformation. Janet Coleman's downfall serves as a cautionary tale studied in ethics classes and corporate training sessions worldwide. Her story demonstrates that in the digital age, discriminatory behavior doesn't stay hidden. It becomes permanent, public, and professionally devastating. The real power of this story lies not in its conclusion, but in its ongoing inspiration. Every viewer who shares this video, every person who commits to confronting bias in their own sphere, every business leader who implements inclusive policies becomes part of Marcus Thompson's legacy. Change doesn't require positions of enormous authority. It requires moral courage and the willingness to act when action is needed. The question isn't whether you can make a difference. The question is, will you? When power meets purpose, justice is inevitable.